Hello, everybody, and welcome to UXDX India. Apologies for the short delay in getting started. We had some technical difficulties, unfortunately, but we hope that you're really excited about what we'll be presenting and talking about today. And there's some fantastic talks coming up later on. So I'm going to give a very quick introduction about what it is that we're doing at UXDX and what we're trying to achieve. And then I'll hand you over to the speakers who you're here to listen to today. So very quickly, the mission of UXDX is to help people get more control over the products they build. And what we mean by that is, I've talked to so many researchers who do so much great research, but then it's forgotten or it's not actually actioned on. Or I've talked to developers who have great ideas for what to do with the product, but they've no avenue to try and get that backlog, or even product managers who are complaining that they can't do what they want to do because they're always doing what sales or the CEO or somebody else is telling them to do, and they don't have the autonomy. So what we're trying to do is help teams to get more control over the products they build, because the teams are the people talking to the end customers and they know what the customers need. So how are we going about this? Well, the key way is to try and shift from projects to product teams. So the project being the traditional waterfall way of working, where everything is decided up front, to more product teams where you're doing continuous research, continuous discovery, continuous design, continuous delivery, and reacting to what the customers are saying they need. So how do we help this? We approach it in three ways. First, we do case study driven talks. So we're less about what is the kind of the theory. So theory is great, but it's practice that really helps you. So we do case study talks that talk about that. Then we have a lot of content and resources on the site. So we have 6 years of talks. We have thousands of articles, all categorized into different areas of product development. So if you're looking for some insights in a particular area, we highly recommend just digging into the Knowledge Center at UXDX. And also the community. We have a large Slack community, which I'll be touching on now in a second, but feel free to jump in there and ask questions. And then training is the third aspect of how we try to help teams, because motivation is great, but if you can't do it easily, you're not going to be able to make those changes. So we help train people on the kind of new skills and new ways of working that will help you shift from that project way of working to more of a product team approach. We really want this to be interactive. So please do ask questions as we go throughout the day. And there's two ways that you can do that. One, there's the chat box on the right-hand side of the screen right now. So feel free to jump in and ask questions of the speakers there. And secondly, we have a Slack channel that you should have all received an invite to. And if we can't get to any of your questions, we'll pass them in there to the speakers and they'll be happy to answer any of those questions that you have. So without further ado, I'm going to hand you over to our first speaker of the day, who is Rajiv, who will be talking about lessons learned, understanding the intersections between product and UX. And I'm really excited for this. So welcome, Rajiv.
Hey, thanks, Roddy. I'm just going to share my screen. So give me a bit of maybe a few minutes and then I think I'll be good to go. Sorry, can you confirm if you can see my screen?
Yes, I can. Yes, I can.
Awesome. Thanks a lot. And hey, hello, everyone. Excited to be here and excited to be talking to all of you. I'll start with a brief introduction about myself. I'm Rajiv. I work as a senior data product at a company called Meesho in India. Meesho is like an e-commerce platform and especially geared towards the tier 2, tier 3, tier 4 segment in India. Before working with Meesho, I used to work with a company called Gojek, spent around 5 years there, did a bunch of roles. And before that, I was in the consulting industry for a long time. So today, as Roddy mentioned, I'll be talking about how to build compelling products and sharing my experience in Meesho and in Gojek as to how, using various insights at the intersection of product and UX, we were able to create products which were compelling, which solve the use cases for our users and help them provide value. Right. So this is broadly the next 20-25 minutes. This is what I'm planning to do. I'll start with how understanding the very diverse demographics and deep diving into the various nuances helps uncover insights, which helps us take product decisions, right? And I'm going to share a few nuances, few examples from my recent experience and how we have been able to use those insights in product decisions, right? The second thing which I'm going to talk about is even after you understand your users very deeply, how it is very important that we also understand the various barriers which prevent our users from being successful in using the product, or it's an impediment for them to fulfill their goals using a product, right? So that's what I'll be covering up as part of breaking barriers. And then I'll also talk about how once you understood your users and how their barriers, how you can actually create compelling, tailored experiences, which ensures that the product that you're building is landing the way it should be, right? And has a higher chances of success. And finally, what I will also talk about very briefly is about this is a specific process of creating products, but how to ensure that this way of building products can be sustained in a big organization at scale, right? So that everyone is actually building products this way. So I'll briefly touch upon the various values, org design, and practices which are important to help that happen. So yeah, having said that, let me start with the first section, as I said, right? So a brief about, so I work on the seller side of things at Meesho, right? And seller side means sellers are the ones who have all the products and which they are willing to sell to the end customers, and they list these products on the platform. And so this is the target group, right? And typically the target group that we have is the, as we call the Bharat of India, right? Which is the tier 2, tier 3, tier 4 segment. A lot of them are probably selling online for the first time. A lot of them actually have come online very recently, right? Experienced internet very recently. Some of the first products that we are used is like WhatsApp, very common first introduction into digital products, and then they graduate into social products and then video streaming products, etc., etc. So their world, if you look at the digital world, that is a lot of them, that's what the digital world is, and that's how they've been introduced to the digital world. Now, when we think about building like a seller panel, seller side product for such a diverse audience, there are a lot of aspects that we have to take into consideration, right? And the team at Meesho, the user research team, the design team, the product team actually went about understanding. So what I'm going to share is basically some of the insights that we uncovered, which we use as guiding principles when we go about building products. And this could be different for different user groups, but the idea is to present some of these aspects so that you understand like what kind of qualitative insights and guiding principles helps us in creating products for these set of audiences, right? So the first thing is familiarity with their existing mental models. And this we realized very early on is that, as I was saying, there is a way that these users experience products both on the offline and the online world, right? And this is at times very different from how you and me are actually experience products. And then we had to understand like what ticks, what doesn't tick, right? So for example, for our sellers, some of the things that's like that the UI and UX needs to be extremely intuitive, right? For example, hiding your navigation under multiple levels, it becomes very difficult for them. Icons only is not a very good way of communicating with them. You typically look at icons plus text, for example. One of the very interesting example which I would like to share is so in our password flow, when you're onboarding, you need to set the password, right? And then the copy used to say something like the password needs to have an uppercase also, right? And we saw that the drop off during this was very high. And once we started deep diving, we uncovered that the word uppercase, for example, is not a very intuitive. It's not used very commonly like you and me, right? You and me intuitively understand what uppercase means. For them, it was alien. And we said that instead of uppercase, something like capital, for example, is something that they typically use, right? And we changed the copy with that specific insight, which led to a difference in the way the conversion worked, right? So these are some of the examples which understanding the ecosystem in which the user operates and utilizing that insight to take product decisions. Another one is around what we realized is we need to reduce the cognitive load when it comes to various decisions that the users have to take with the product, right? If using your products means that they have to take a lot of decision making by themselves, then the chances of success are very low, right? Instead, if the product is able to do a lot of heavy lifting and the users have the option and the choice to accept and move forward, that leads to better conversion and that leads to better user experience. For example, when it comes to suggesting prices for their catalog, we suggest prices and then the user is able to edit it if they want to, right? Also in terms of catalog upload, having less stringent rules. So these are some of the things that we need to do to reduce the decision making on the user side so that the adoption is better. The second thing which also we understood, and it also came across from understanding the users deeply, is how they operate when something is very new to them, right? So typically, for example, let's take an example of let's say want to start a bank account. What they will do is they will look out for someone senior in the community or in the family who has done already that, and they will ask them to accompany them to the bank, help them do all the process, and use them as a help to get through that process. And typically, what we call as Sathi, right? And what we figured was even when you need to ensure the adoption of your product, you also need to use the same mental model and provide them such an experience, right? Because as I said, a lot of them are new to e-commerce. So how do you ensure them that when they come into this new world, new product, they always feel that there is someone who is helping me out to get through this journey, which is like very alien to me, right? So that's why we have like very bite-sized goals for them once they get onboarded, and during the activation process, we have this like small bite-sized goals which they can do, right? And then we have videos, small bite-sized videos actually done by human beings who relate to these sellers, and then like explaining. And even when they look at the video and they don't understand it, we have a human touch wherein you say that, okay, we have this webinar which is available to you. So every step of their journey, we ensure that wherever there is a chance to create anxiety, we are there. The interventions are there in the form of providing that Sathi to them, right? And the fourth aspect is ensuring that the anxiety which comes due to that unpredictable nature of the digital world is taken care of and is removed, right? Because as I said, they are new, they have a lot of anxiety, and they don't know like certain interactions when they make on the product, how is it going to change the behavior of the product, right? If I'm going to click this button, for example, what is the next thing I'm going to see? If I've taken this action, what is the next thing which is going to happen 3 days later? So all of these are very important aspects which we need to take into account when we started building products, right? So for example, our CTAs are very, very clear. Navigate to a certain place, for example. Or when you have taken an action and landed on a successful page, you say that, okay, great. Now your money will be credited into your bank account in X number of days, right? So there is like no ambiguity in terms of what is going to happen next. There is a predictable nature that is built in, right? So in summary, these are some of the guiding principles. Again, there are more, but these are some of the guiding principles which keep in mind when we are taking product decisions, when we are taking design decisions, right? And which has helped us a lot. Second is understanding the barriers, right? Now, having understood the users and having understood what helps them succeed, you also need to understand the constraints around which they are operating, right? Because if you don't have that understanding, what will happen is, no matter what product you build basis the insights that you have, if you're not taking care of the barriers and the constraints, then they will not be able to succeed, right? And hence we also understood and realized that there are a bunch of barriers that the users face when they're using our products. So a few examples again there, right? One is accessibility barriers. A lot of our suppliers typically do not have a laptop or a desktop, right? So there is an incident when, so I was doing a supplier call and I was talking to the supplier. He had just onboarded to Misho like 3 days ago. And I asked him, hey, you've been onboarded, registered 3 days ago. Why haven't you uploaded any products? And he was like, yeah, I did not have a laptop, which I had to borrow from my friend. And then I'm waiting for the technician to come and fix the broadband for me. And then I will do the product. So I'm going to do it, but just these are my constraints, right? So some of the things that you realize here is like, one, they don't have the tool which is necessary for them to do business. So they need to depend on someone. Second is they don't know things like, even if I have data on my mobile, I can actually use that. Even if I have laptop, even without broadband, I can actually use it via hotspot, etc. So they don't know all of these kind of things. So that's when we realized that reaching the user where they are is extremely important. So for example, that's why for us, mobile and having an experience and having a great experience on mobile as well is extremely important. And we take a very like platform agnostic view when we are building products. Second one is usability barriers. So here also another anecdote is when it comes to sellers, let's say on other platforms, one of the things that we have seen is these sellers are very accustomed to using Excels, for example, right? If you want to upload products, they will download an Excel, they'll do a bunch of things, make changes to prices, etc., and upload it. What we realized again was our target group is not comfortable with Excel at all. They have not used Excel. Some of them are like retailers who have just like run retail shops for the past X number of years, never used anything like Excel. So when we first introduced our catalog upload in an Excel flow, a lot of the sellers found it difficult to use Excel, to do all of that, right? That's when we realized that now we need to actually, again, understand their barrier, build something which they can do, right? And that's when we introduced a flow wherein no Excel, nothing is needed. They can actually do one product at a time, which is simple, easy enough to understand, and can be done very easily, even via mobile, for example, right? So this is another, like, understanding the usability barrier. Another thing is localization of content. Like being a diverse audience, we were always started with English, but obviously soon realized that we cannot land all our messaging, our user experience, and we have to be localized. So we started understanding how users comprehend written communication, iconography, visual communication, all of that, right? And slowly we started realizing the barriers that they face when it comes to that. For example, we started off with communication, right? What all communication we send, how can we localize that? And we saw whether there is an uptick when we actually localize content. Using English, for example, is very, very effective with certain set of audience, right? Rather than going very local to the language like a Hindi or a Malayalam or a Tamil. Another aspect is do not try to localize commonly used words, right? For example, things like order, penalty, all of these things are known to them. Don't try to even like try to localize that into the language. So all of these nuances when it comes to usability is also something that you need to understand, apply when you are taking product decisions or user experience decisions. And the third one is, again, given the audience, given the set of experiences that they have, there is an inherent trust deficit when it comes to using digital products, and especially digital products for their income, which is like they are dependent on, right? So understanding what are the various fears and anxiety that they have, ensuring that we take care of that via social proofing, ensuring that other sellers have been successful, this is what they have done. So when they know, when they understand that people within their community have been able to successful, they will also kind of build that like trust, right? like taking care of myths that they have, right? For example, some people think that small sellers cannot be successful. So ensuring that we have built the platform in a democratic way that you can also be successful. These are some of the things that that comes as barriers when we try to interact with our user group. And this, we need to be very proactive in ensuring that this messaging is done. It's done in the right way, and it is taken care of when it comes to building products. So that is the another aspect, right? Understanding users, understanding their barriers, and understanding how to break those barriers. Now, once you have understood users, their barriers, and you have built like really great products, but you also have to ensure that when you're introducing this product or features or anything to the users, how do you ensure that you are introducing it in a tailored way, in a very specific way, in a customized way, so that it lands well? The value of what that product or feature delivers, how it is beneficial to them, all of that is landed well, and it is very clear to the users. And that is when the adoption of the product and the success is taken care of, right? So we also do it in a similar way. So what we do is like we use a concept of awareness, consideration, and conversion, and I will explain it via an example, right? So let's take an example of in Misho. When if you want to become a seller, it is a fairly, and looking at the target group that we have, it's a fairly complicated process, right? Because there are anxieties around doing online business. Second is there are needs of some regulatory needs, right? For example, bank details, having your GST, which is necessary for taxation. And then it comes, it comes to trust deficit. If I have GST, then will have tax implications. I've never had GST in my whole life. How is it going to be? And all of that, right? So there are a lot of questions in the seller's mind when they want to become a when they want to become a seller, right? So when we think about the onboarding experience, we take it like in a step-by-step way. So it starts right from building an awareness about the brand and the product itself and the value proposition itself. So when it comes to brand campaigns, the category entry points, the communications that we do, we do it at multi levels, right? You first communicate the core value of the product, and then you also communicate the sub values, things like getting orders, zero penalty, all of these things which create anxiety. You need to ensure that during your brand campaigns, during a performance marketing, etc., those are like continuously communicated and it's landed on the user's mind, right? And that creates an awareness. But once you have created the awareness, let's say 100 people get interested in your product. But once they decide to come onto the product and use it, they're also, when in our onboarding flow, we know that this is not a converted user, right? Because if 100 people are aware, 80 come to experience the product, we need to ensure that all of these 80 continue go and get onboarded on the product. So for that, during the consideration phase, because mind you, once you have made aware, they come onto the platform, they're still in double minds. Some of them are on the fence. Is this the right thing to do? Should I do it or not? What is the cost? What are the implications? So here also, you need to ensure that you proactively understand what their anxieties are and you take care of that. So in our onboarding flow, if you look at it, once they are aware and they land on supply.misho.com, it's very clear. There is a hero about what the value proposition is, which is related to their income, which is the most important thing for them. Then you have social proofing, how other sellers have been successful. Then you have FAQs around the anxiety points that they have. Then you have myth busting around like small sellers also can be successful. So all of the things which I was talking about in the earlier slides about understanding the users, their barriers, all of that needs to be converted into communication, which is easy for the users to understand and helps them who all are on the fence, helps them convert into taking a decision to get onboarded on the platform. And once they take the decision to get onboard on the platform, here also, as I said, the process is not very simple, right? Because you have to provide your details, personal details, bank details, GST. So these are not very easy. And we need to understand how to make this process easy for our sellers, right? So if you look at our onboarding flow, again, going back to understanding the users, and doing the heavy lifting on the product side, we have a very step-by-step flow of small bite-sized goals. Then we know the certain points wherein people are bound to get stuck, or there is a high level of anxiety. Things like providing bank details, or things like where you need to provide the GST details. We know that these are the steps wherein a lot of help is needed. There, going back to what I was saying, we have the Sati sort of a mentality, right? There is a very clear indication of, do you have this? If not, then this is the help that you provide, and you can do this, etc., etc. Right? So during the conversion flow step also, these kind of things are taken into consideration. So this is about understanding the users, their barriers, and ensuring that you land your experiences very well, right? And this sort of a framework has helped us build like multiple features and products, and improve uh, improve our probability of success, right? Obviously, I mean, there are areas wherein you still continue to learn, but I think keeping these framework in mind and keeping those insights and guidelines in mind has helped us build products which scale. Now, when you think about that, when you think about this process of building products, you also need to understand that how do you convert this process into work at a scale, right? When you are a big company, the product org is big. How do you ensure that all the teams, all the product managers, all the user researchers, all the designers are following a set process and are able to adapt to some of these aspects, right? And for that, some of the things are very important. One is values. Like, what are the values which everyone kind of inculcates, right? Second is, do you have the organization structure to help implement some of these practices and be successful? And third are what are some of the practices which enforces the adherence to some of this framework, right? And I think in the interest of time, I will quickly go through that. So when you look at, for example, in my current company at Misho, when you look at our values, there are a lot of values which resonates with what I was just mentioning, right? For example, being user first. It's one of the very, very important values. How do you understand the core of your users? How do you understand the nuances? How do you understand the insights which we are talking about? It's a very important value that everyone expected to like adhere to, right? Similarly, there are other values like being problem first, depth and detail orientation. So some of this, ensuring that once your company has some of these values, these are inculcated in every individual who is working and is incorporated in the day-to-day decision making. Second is having an organization structure which supports this. So for example, we have a fully staffed, really good team of all the critical functions like user research, design, product, engineering, etc. We also ensure that the organization structure are like, we have self-contained pods which have engineers, designers, etc., everyone working towards a single goal, which ensures that there is involvement of user research and product designers upstream in the process, so that all of these kind of nuances can be taken care of. Product managers, designers, and user research collaborate very, very closely to unearth those insights and use that into the decision-making process. And finally, some of the practices, right? And again, different organizations can have different practices, but these are some of the practices which help us inculcate some of these values which I mentioned, right? So one of the values is what we call as listen or die, for example. Every employee who joins the company is expected to go through this program, wherein they will call tens of customers or suppliers, or who are their main customers are, understand them, create an insight, and then present it back to the team that they're working on, right? And this ensures that that connect is built from day one itself. Then we have practices called like problem first sessions and working sessions, wherein it is it is enforced, or it's ensured that the teams follow this practice of understanding their users, their barriers, and things like that. And also we have supporting documents and templates, wherein even someone who is new to the system, who is not used to the system, is able to quickly adapt to this kind of way of working, which helps us ensure that we build products in a successful way. So yeah, these are some of the things that in my experience helped us build successful products. Yeah, that's it from me. Thanks a lot.
Excellent. Thank you, Rajiv. That was really interesting. And I learned some interesting things there, like Sathi and English are things that are new for me. But thank you. And I would love to, I actually have some questions for you, and I would love to dive into them, but unfortunately we're out of time at the moment, but I will post them on the Slack channel. And if anybody out there has questions as well, please do. And we'll direct them to Rajiv, who I'm sure will be happy to answer them. So thank you very much, Rajiv.
Thank you.
So up next, we have Shreya, who is a product designer at Flipkart, and she's going to be talking about design sprints, but less so kind of, I guess, the design sprint itself, which is kind of what most people talk about, but how to use it as a collaboration tool. So I'm really interested to learn more about how Shreya is approaching design sprints and how they're using them at Flipkart. So welcome, Shreya.
Hi, Rudy. Thank you so much for introduction. I'm going to share my screen. Yeah, let me know when it's visible.
Yep, it's visible now.
Okay. Hello everyone. This is Shreya, and I'm a product designer at Flipkart. In today's talk, I'm going to be discussing about how design sprints can be used as a collaborative tool. This is something which I have been experimenting in my past companies, and we're going to be diving deep into what are the benefits of a design sprint, how is it different from agile sprints, and how they can possibly go together. So let's get started. I'm sure most of you have looked at this door, in malls or in other places. So if you know what it is actually called, it's called as a Norman door. So what a Norman door is it looks opposite to the way it is supposed to be interacted with. So you would think that the handle is outside, so you want to pull it, but actually you have to push through the door. So why is it designed in this way, right? Was there no thought process behind this? Or a design which requires explanation is really not thought through and is probably badly designed, right? So these are the things in the practical world. Now let's get into something which we as designers experience every day, that is design thinking. So if you just do a simple Google search of, if you just type design sprints on Google and just go to image tab, you would see, bunch of images which talk about a 5-step process, which goes from empathizing, define, ideating, prototyping, and testing. Right. This is a very clear-cut process which many of the companies or lots of designers use to, put ideas to practice in front of their users. So let me take you all a little bit back in time and talk about a time when I was interning at a startup. So the idea there was that we were building an exam system product. And this product is supposed to have two different interfaces, the examiner interface and the student interface. In the examiner interface, the examiner is supposed to create questions, different kinds, multi-select, single select, and the students are supposed to attempt it, right? Looks very easy to understand. So yeah, let's see what happened there. So what we were thinking was that we'll go from idea to launch and build that MVP. And it's gonna be a simple 3-step process. We already know the requirements, and we will gonna build it and then launch the MVP. Probably after launching the MVP, we will do some learnings, and then the idea, it will go back to iterate. It will become an iterative process and go back to the idea. But it turns out that the building process obviously takes a very long time, right? It is not a short process. Building the entire examiner portal and the student portal was a very long process. And then, launching the MVP, again, going back to the learn stage and back to the idea is obviously gonna take a very long time. So what we want to instead do is iterate between idea and learn very fast. do step 1 and step 4 instead of going through the entire circle. When you do this, your idea of exam system portal, you test it out without having to build it, and then learn from the shortcomings, learn from what your users are saying about it, learn from, do they actually understand your exam system portal? How are the students feeling? What do the examiners say? Are they able to create questions? Are students able to attempt those questions or not? So we want to shorten the process of going from idea to learn. How can we do that? Should we do agile? Should we just do scrum? There are lots of words if you look into the internet. You have to innovate faster in order to learn faster. Reduce all the ways, reduce all the features which are not needed to go into the MVP, and hence become more efficient, right? This is all, all these kind of jargons we usually hear. So, but what we have to instead do is take a step back and think why we are doing this and who we are building this for, and what value is this solution going to provide to the customer, right? And do we really need to spend our engineering effort and time and all those money into building something which might not work for our users? So what design thinking says is that it's a human-centered approach of creative problem solving. It's a mindset, it's a philosophy which has been coming from a very long time. And you have to figure out how this, design thinking process of ideating, prototyping, testing, and validating has to be used. It's just a philosophy, right? You need to still apply to your company. You need to still have a process in place. So here is where design sprint comes, which is a clear process. It is a step-by-step like a recipe. So it tells you what you have to do for a 5-day process, and it is very clear in its approach, and it has a clear objective and goal. So let's see how, when we follow it, what happens. So a design sprint fits exactly between the puzzle of design thinking to agile development sprints. So when you have the design thinking philosophy, connecting it to agile development environment, a design sprint will play an instrumental role to be agile and to have, so that agile can be used to become more and more design driven and more customer centric. And how that's going to happen, we are going to be seeing that ahead. While a design thinking is a more fragmented approach, in sprints, we are collaborating and we are coming together. While in design thinking, we are thinking that we are just building an MVP, we are just taking a very long time to build something and test it out, spending a lot of money. While in design sprints, we are trying to fake it. Fake an idea, fake a feature, fake build it, and then get response from your team, from your users. So let's see what this design sprint was actually built by Google Ventures. And now we are going to be understanding how you can conduct a design sprint, right? So the journey of thinking of trying something new like a design sprint can be very intimidating for anyone. A company who's been just following agile UX process will first find design sprints very intimidating to start with. To give you a little bit more in-depth knowledge of what a design sprint is, it's a clear 5-day process which goes from mapping to sketching the solution, to deciding the best option, prototyping it, and testing it. Sounds very simple like design thinking, but it has its own clear set of agenda for 5 days. And at the end of 5 days, you're going to have an output. You're going to be more confident about the feature that you're going to be rolling out. You're going to be more confident about what your customers are going to see and whether will it answer your critical business questions or not. Let's say you're trying to build a travel application where the users that you are targeting are trying to make a trip, but trying to have a trip builder inside the application where they can plan a free and easy tour and trip along for their families or for their friends. What are they going to be needing, right? Let's say that's your goal. So what you have to do on day one is gather your team, your PMs, your designers, your researchers, and understand why you are doing this project for. If you're building a travel application, who are these users going to be and what problem are you solving? Let's say you're going to solve a problem of free and easy trip. What's the success metrics of that? A success metric for that can possibly be that your users are able to create a custom itinerary for them. Let's go ahead with that and move into what day 2 says. On day 2, your sprint team is going to be generating as many ideas as possible. And they're going to be experimenting various ways in which a user can make a possible itinerary. How can they understand what places are there around to look for at a particular travel destination? What are different food options? They're going to be sketching all the possible ideas of making a custom, free, and easy trip for your users. On day 3, all of those generated ideas that have come to build a free and easy tour for your travel application have to be dot voted by all the participants. And that has to be done based on certain criteria that you found a particular idea very interesting, and that can be taken ahead based on certain reasoning. You dot vote them, and all the members of the team are going to select one of that idea. On day 4, if you have a few solutioning, you're going to be creating prototypes for your travel application. Like, these are the most important places to go, a flow for that. How can a user build a trip out, a free and easy trip? How can they add destination? How can they purchase ticket of nearby attractions? A representative solutioning of this concept has to be built by your team, right? And all the interaction touch points are going to be developed. Maybe, day 4 would be more rigorous from design point of view, because more and more designers have to spend time to, make this prototype good enough to test it with your users. And on day 5, you're going to be gathering the feedback on this prototype with your target audience. Remember, obviously, day 5 cannot come abruptly. You need to shortlist your stakeholders before you start day 1. So you have to definitely do a background work before you come to day 5, so that you can get your users on board and start testing, evaluate your product, evaluate the idea, and most importantly, evaluate that goal which you had set on day 1 for this travel application for sale. What's the outcome? Do you stop here or move ahead? It's just a prototype, right? You can scrap it. You've just spent 5 days on it. Maybe you can scrap it. Or maybe you can go ahead with the idea. Understanding what the gaps are at the end of day 5 with your customers is very important to see whether you want to continue with the design sprint or not. Your product team or your leadership team would appreciate it more if they can see a tangible output at the end of 5 days. 5 days is a very short time. So they can see if it's going to be working to invest a long agile development sprint into this idea or not. Now, how do you convince your teams to try design sprint? If this is something new that they have to be trying, if they are into agile UX and they want to try design sprint, how would you convince them, right? You have to definitely wait for the right moment or a right project. It doesn't even have to be a complete project. It can just be a small idea that you want to test it for your product. Let's say this travel application only, that you want to build a custom itinerary for your users to build a free and easy trip planning. So maybe this is something new which your company is trying, and you want to see if design sprints can help here or not. You have to also understand how your team is structured and if it's right for your team structure or not. Most importantly, if you say that you have run one design sprint, document the design sprint. Document the learnings that you had at the end of 5 days, so they can practically think if they really want to invest in something like design sprint or not. We're going to be seeing ahead how we can insert design sprints in our agile development space. Now let's see how we can bridge the gaps between the design sprints and the Scrum sprints. That is, the prototypes that you have built, which is the fake product, into working products. So obviously, we do not run design sprints in a waterfall process. We are working in an agile space. Continuous improvement is the agile manifesto, which we are going to be following in design sprints as well. So when we are incorporating design sprints for agile sprints, we need to understand the right moment where you need to include the design sprint again. Let's say, for example, for the travel application, you ran 2 sprints and you have a good understanding of what the users want at the end of sprint 1 and sprint 2, and you're building your custom itinerary. 2 weeks of dev sprint, 4 weeks of dev sprints have happened. And then you suddenly realize maybe I also need to collaborate with, let's say, a cab booking facility also. That's an interesting feature that would go on a travel app, right? You're going to a new place. You are not sure about logistics and travel travel options that can be available in a new place. And let's say you want to introduce that feature now after the end of 4 weeks of dev sprint. Now you can run a design sprint again, test that idea within 5 days and see whether you want to really invest in it or not in terms of development. Finally, when a design sprint handoff is happening, at the end of 5 days, you have a validated learning or your prototype. All of these will go as entries to the backlog of an agile sprint. And this has to be done clearly in the form of user stories. Let's see this mapping with the help of an example. Let's take the example of same travel application where the user activity can possibly be adding tourist places of attraction to build a custom itinerary. For that, they have to visit the product page of those tourist attraction. They have to see the prices, they have to decide the timing, and then they have to keep adding all of that to a custom itinerary which they want to build for a day. So those will become the user task. User subtask can be probably doing payments for all those different tourist attraction. And definitely there's gonna be empty cases and dependencies. Essentially, what you have to understand that you have to break a huge user activity into sub-activity, and all of these sub-activities are gonna go into backlog of your development sprint. You have to think in a very modular way so that when you're communicating this to your engineering team, when you're collaborating this, you're building a shared understanding of why this breakdown has happened and why this split has been done into user story. Coming to collaboration with development team, you have to be working very closely with them when you are at the end of day 5. You might have to spend a couple of days more to make the flows even more detailed as prototype for your development sprint. Also understand the technical feasibility of the design. Obviously, there will be some gaps which your engineering team will help to understand, and incorporate the feedback for your next design sprint. So that, when you're understanding how your teams are working, how your engineering is working, you can incorporate that feedback in your design sprint if it's needed. Finally, the takeaways, which I think is a great learning from design sprint, is we are talking more in terms of agile space, is that you fail fast and learn and take the decisions better in the next iteration. Your ideas, your suggestions from different stakeholders, be it engineering, be it product team, be it your business team, plays a very important role in that 5-day process where one of the days you're going to be dot voting the idea. So ideas and suggestions are a key to understand how collaborative design sprints are. And a strong feedback loop obviously goes a long way to nurture your designs and build a better prototype. And finally, a better product to market. So with that note, I come to the end of my presentation. It's a wrap. And do feel free to reach out to me on any of the social media platforms. I'm available on all of the handles that you can see. And that's it. Thank you so much.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Shreya. That was really great overview of the design sprint process. I have a question actually, because I thought it was quite interesting. You brought it up at the end that the engineers might have a challenge with the feasibility of some of the ideas that you have. Do you have any examples of that happening? And have you ever brought the engineers in earlier and actually participate in the design sprint itself?
Yeah, so when you're having that first design sprint and you're ready with very wild ideas and fancy ideas for an MVP, it might not come into market because of the technical challenges or the timeline challenges that might have. So maybe they are able to build in consecutive sprints, But in the beginning, they would have, they wouldn't be ready to spend so much time on a complicated requirement. I have faced such challenges as well, where the engineering team says, we cannot do this flow, but we can possibly do a shorter version of this for V0, and then improvise it going ahead, because learning from what we did in the previous design sprint is the key ahead. So yeah.
Excellent. No, that's really good. And the other one that I've often heard people say, so the engineers is one kind of side of the design sprint. The other one is, I don't have time for this. This is 5 days of like focus on this one problem when I've got 20 other things that need to get done. So how do you handle that kind of scheduling issue?
We always have that pressure of deadline, and as designers, we think so creatively, and then all of those ideas are shut down. If they are not taken ahead, then we may feel that what hard work you have done over the time you have spent is not pushing to going to live. I think what is essential here is having that influential attitude in you, so that you can convince your team that, hey, this is the feature that's gonna make or break the experience of the user. If you put it in that way, then even if it's a very crazy feature which takes a little bit time of them, they would take it up. That's what I have observed. You have to have that influential attitude in you to convince them first that this is going to make a huge difference. Users are going to be feeling very excited if they see this. This is going to be the differentiating factor. Then that sweet spot, if you can attain, then there's nothing like it. Once you start convincing them, then even for your bigger ideas, they'll get convinced.
Excellent. As so often the case, it comes down to relationships and how well you communicate.
Relationship, yeah.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much for the presentation, Shreya. And as well, if there's anybody out in the audience who has any questions, please do just post them in the Slack channel, and Shreya will be happy to answer those. So thank you, Shreya.
Thank you.
So next up, we have Jay, who's a senior product manager at Avalara, and he's going to be talking about what's really interesting is the kind of scaling from product to platform mindset. So there's a lot of talk about you need to get a product mindset. So Jay's going one step further. So looking forward to hearing what he has to say. So welcome, Jay.
Thanks, Rory. Thanks a lot. Just let me know once my screen is visible. Just give me a moment. Is my screen visible?
Yep, visible now.
Okay. Okay. So as Rory has already highlighted, good evening and good morning to everyone, whichever the part of the world you are watching this presentation. So topic of my presentation is scaling from product to platform mindset. As we say that product is a mindset, platform is also a mindset. And if you are looking forward to scale your product to a platform, there are a few things, where I would like to share my experience, based on my learnings. So I am Jay Rembani. I am a product management professional with 16 plus years of experience primarily in product first implementations and platform management. At Avalara, I manage a portfolio of platform integration products called connectors and extractors. The objective of this presentation today is to basically share my view, which I have tweaked basis on my experience of working with various products in my career and the platforms which I have built out of those products. I am going to present my views, on the external platforms and not on the internal platforms. So just in the interest of the time, we'll be focusing only on the external platform. And for this purpose of presentation, I have used Amazon and Avalara as the example to share my learnings, and the principles of scaling your product to platform is where I'll be constantly using these two examples. Why Avalara? Avalara is a global compliance tax platform where we are actually in a way of transitioning and evolving ourselves from a product family to a large-scale compliance platform. Why Amazon? Because Amazon is the most relatable example for majority of the audience. And we are also a partner with Amazon, where I've built the products for Amazon which are related to tax compliance. So that's why I've taken these two examples. Coming on to the agenda, we will start off with the product versus platform as to what is the differentiation between a product and a platform and what are the similarities. We'll talk about the core concepts which are important if you are looking forward to transition your product from a product to a platform or a multi-product platform. And then we'll touch upon the layers and the framework which are important from a platform design point of view. And then a sneak peek into how we are transitioning into from a product to platform here at Avalara, and from a SaaS industry perspective, what are the things how you can design into a platform. And then at the end we'll present the summary. So starting off with product versus platform. So product, as the way I would want to put it across, is anything that is available for attention, acquisition, use, or consumption. And platform is basically a business that where which is powered by the ability to leverage and orchestrate the ecosystem of producers and consumers, where they all come together and there is an exchange which occurs and there is a value creation which happens. So as in the case of the Amazon, the platform where sellers are selling their goods and products, and we as consumers we go and buy those products. So there is an exchange which is happening, and there are multiple partners in terms of delivery, in terms of everything that revolves around this exchange. They are also participating. So that's why Amazon becomes a platform and fits into that definition. So let's understand, if you have to transition your product, if you are a mono-product company, what are the key factors you have to keep in mind if you have to transition to a platform? So in the case of product, the basic 6 parameters which are considered for this differential analysis is that once you think of product is all about core asset lies in the features. Whenever we are building a product, we talk about features, we talk about user journeys and customer flow within that, how a user would be using the product. But when we are talking about platform takes a bigger scale, where you just not talk about one feature is of course, but feature is basically a part of the product, and products in turn are a subset of the platform. Then from a design point of view, whenever we are designing a product, the idea is we focus primarily on the user persona. But when we're designing a platform, it is more around the exchange, and what is that core activity which will be happening on the platform and everything that revolves around it. In terms of the value creation, the value is created for the products via understanding the user persona, user journey. Again, in the case of platform, the exchange becomes the center of the entire design. And from a cost point of view, when we think of a product, it is primarily a subscription-driven product, and you can think of any product in your day-to-day life, if you are paying for it. And it is very common in the SaaS industry where I come from, is that there is a subscription and there is a freemium, which is where the product is generating revenue for the organization. But when it comes to platform, there are multiple sources of revenue generation, and sometimes as a platform you also have to incur the cost to ensure that the exchange is happening. What do I mean by that? That when you are building a platform, so their subscription will be one element of it, but there are partners in who are also coming on your platform and powering that exchange. You have to share the revenue with these partners who are coming on your platform, and at the same time they will also share the revenue with you. So there are multiple sources of revenue stream in the case of platform. From a business drivers perspective, that is, it primarily product focuses on users and enterprises, whereas platform focuses on the entire ecosystem, which involves producers, consumers, and partners. So now, we'll quickly jump onto the key platform concepts. The most important one and the primary one is the network effect. So what do we mean by network effect? So in theory, a network effect relates to any situation where the value of product is or service or a platform is directly proportional to the number of users who are leveraging it. In short, the more the number of buyers and sellers who are using the product, the greater the network effect would be, and then the greater the value of value which will be getting generated on that platform. So within the network effect, there are multiple variations. We talk about same side network effect, cross side network effect, positive network effect, and the negative network effect. But for the interest of this presentation, I've considered a positive network effect. And imagine, as I said, when you talk about network effect, we just said that the greater the number of users, the more value in the exchange which will be generated on the platform. So for this, I've considered a very basic example of a marketplace platform like Amazon. And what you're seeing on the screen is basically a flywheel. Now, the network effect of the positive network effect goes like that, the more number of producers and sellers you have on platform, you will have more options and choices. Because more number of producers are coming there selling different products of different varieties. So as a consumer, as a user of that platform, you will have more options to choose from. And once you have got more options to choose from, you will have more customers and buyers who are coming on the platform to buy the goods which are being sold by the sellers. And then the more number of the customers which are coming, it will lead to the higher earning potential for the existing sellers, which are already on that platform. And that will ensure that there is a word of mouth, and then there is a network effect which will pull in more sellers to come on this platform and sell more. So now, if you look at this a circle of a positive network effect where it is continuously feeding into each other. Now that is because this is an example of marketplace positive a platform. So that's basically. When we talk about the network effect, that's what, when you are building a product, you have to think about, the various stakeholders which you would be incorporating or involving once you are transitioning from a product to platform, and you have to ensure that there is an element of network effect within your product. Now, the second and the important concept is the platform and the value exchange. So what do you mean by the exchange? So when we talk about exchange, exchange primarily involves, some sort of an interplay of exchange of value in terms of, goods and social and economic currency. So say, for example, if a producer or a seller is creating something or selling something on the marketplace platform like Amazon, he's creating, he's creating something of value. And when a consumer buys it, they pay it in the form of, economic currency. Cut to a social, platform like Facebook, or say, for instance, LinkedIn, where you create a post, and then the people will come, and if they find it interesting, they will like it. So in that case, they are repaying the value which you have generated in the form of social currency, that is economic and currency, socio-economic currency, in terms of likes. So when we talk about the value, so this is another important, that when you are building a product, you have to ensure that the value exchange, the value proposition of your product is very clear, which can be scaled later on when you are scaling to platform. So now here I've presented this pictorial representation of a value exchange. As you can see that exchange, if you consider as an equation, you have got producers on the left hand side and the consumers on the right hand side. Whenever a producer produces something of a value, it goes to the consumer. Consumer pays it in the form of currency, which is social or economic. And then to increase the value of this exchange, to enhance the value of this exchange, a platform involves partners. Now, I'll stop here and give you an example of our partnership with Avlara's partnership with Amazon, and then you can extrapolate that example to the other partners which are in Amazon ecosystem. So sellers, whenever they are selling something, any goods, be it any part of the world, they are liable to file the taxes. So if I am a seller on Amazon, say in United States, then I need to ensure that I'm filing the liability which is due to me, which I owe to the Department of Revenue. Now, if I'm on Amazon, I go and search as a seller on the Amazon for the tax compliance or tax solution partners which are tied up with Amazon, and there I find Avlara and some other tax calculation and return filing partners. Now, since filing taxes is an important part of ensuring the business is compliant, I go ahead and identify a partner, Avalara or someone else, to file my taxes. Now imagine a scenario, and that ensures that I stay with Amazon, because Amazon is providing me an access to a bunch of partners, which can help me in solving a particular business issue. Say, for instance, if I'm looking for a delivery partner, or a logistic partner, I'll have an ability to go and subscribe for those products. So this way, Amazon as a platform is generating value for the partners who are coming into its ecosystem, but at the same time, the partners are also getting an opportunity to, earn revenue by, listing themselves over there. So that's how an exchange, which is simply, not just as a seller selling the goods and producer and consumer buying it, but at the same time, there is an element of partner which comes and which ensures that the exchange itself is enhanced. Imagine a scenario if there was no compliance partner available on the Amazon, and it would have, how difficult it would have been for the sellers who are selling on Amazon to do the business. So they would have moved to another, competitor marketplace. But Amazon being a platform ensured that there are multiple producers for the requirement. So that's where the value exchange, the value is getting created and it is getting enhanced for all the stakeholders of the system. Now, when we think about a platform, right? So when we are thinking about scaling our product, you have to think platform, and you want to move towards a platform, you have to think about an architecture, right? So platform, of course, is a very technical concept, but if you have to think in terms of the thought process, how it should be. So for that, I've designed this framework that is, that relates to 3EM, that's what I call it, is basically engage, encourage, enable, and match. So what do I mean by that? So engage is basically, a platform has to ensure that, we are engaging that, producers and consumers and partners to, come on the platform in the very initial days. Whenever any platform is getting built, there are ways to, attract and, aware, make the sellers and the consumers aware to use that particular platform, and the various mechanisms like, online media, offline, or a hybrid version of that. Whenever a platform is getting launched, to create that initial attraction, they're engaging the platforms, they're engaging the stakeholders, producers, consumers, or partners to participate in that. Once the participants are engaged, then the next level of work which involves is encourage, right? You have to engage your participants to produce and create and contribute a value on the platform, so that platform itself powers that exchange and it remains relevant to the outside world. And then once they are already involved in that platform, then you have to enable through role-based accesses, so that they're able to contribute, curate, and create a value on the platform. So if you are a producer, then you should be able to create your product catalog, and Rajiv initially talked about that, how Meesho has enabled the sellers with the help of the product catalog, since they are not okay with the idea of using the Excel. So that sort of an enablement is required if you have to ensure that the more and more number of users are coming on your platform. And then once you have got these three levers taken care of, the most important part which is there is you have to match. So if you are looking, like I cited an example of Avalara, when you are looking for a tax compliance partner on Amazon or any of these marketplaces which are top ranked, you will find Avalara as one of the tax partners. So if I, as a seller, if I'm looking for something, then I have to have a supply of that on the platform. Same goes on the consumer side of the platform, that if I am if I'm a consumer, then if I'm searching for something, I need to have that level of variety of the goods which I'm looking at, so that I can make an appropriate choice. So like in the first slide, as I showed that there's a flywheel effect that gets into picture, that the more number of sellers which are there, the more options are there, and then you have to ensure that the quality is also maintained. So if I have to present it pictorially, this thought architecture, then it's basically engaging platform is at the middle, and you have to engage the producers and the consumers and partners which are enhancing that engagement, so all the stakeholders are involved. And then once you have engaged, then there's an encouragement which is happening, which is basically allowing these partners to connect with your platform with the help of APIs and microservices. And then, once they are encouraged, you have to enable them that they are able to contribute and perform a dual roles. A partner can be a consumer, a partner can be a producer, and at the same time, all these roles are interchangeable. That's how the multi-sided platform is getting created. So the theory lies in enablement. How do you enable them? And then once ensuring that the demands are being met, like what I'm looking, there is an enough supply on the platform so that demand and supply are being matched. The next concept which I'm going to touch upon, that whenever you are transitioning your product to a platform, you have to make sure that there is an element of design. And when we talk about design, it's primarily in a technical design aspect. So any platform usually have or will have the combination of these three layers, or all these three layers taken together. Now, what are these primary three layers? And fourth one, I'll talk about it, is that first one is the network. Network basically ensures that producers and the consumers and the partners which are coming onto these layers, and then there is an element of community. And so say for instance, if there is a social media platform, to begin with, it will always start as a community first platform. Say for instance, Craigslist was when it's in its very initial days, it was a network or a community driven platform. Later on, when the number of users increased, there is a level of infrastructure which was added to it. So the first layer is a network. Any platform will have an element of network where and there is an element of community which is involved there. And to support this community, there is another layer which is required, is infrastructure layer. So when we talk about infrastructure, is primarily talking about the tools to enable the producers and consumers, which will provide them an access, which will give them an access to access this platform, rules and the APIs and the algorithms that primarily constitute an infrastructure, depending upon what is the level of which layer is high. The infrastructure layer can increase its percentage in this layers. And then the third layer is a data layer, where you have to ensure that demand and supply are getting matched, and what are the various activities which users are taking on your product / platform, so that you can design your platform and take the constant feedback which is coming from the user behavior. Now, to stitch all these layers together, another important layer is the layer of the communication. So when we talk about the layer of communication, we don't just talk about the level of communication between these three layers, on the inbound side, but also the communication, the kind of which is outbound side, right? So what sort of a positioning you want to have for your platform, when you are talking about when you are reaching out to your end users, like these days 10-minute delivery platform, right? So that's the positioning Zeta wants to create in the minds of the end users, that that's their unique selling proposition. Amazon has got its different positioning, like how they communicate with the end users. At Avalara, we communicate ourselves as a global tax compliance platform, right? So we make tax as less taxing. So what sort of a communication, not just in the layers, what you are seeing in the platform, but what is the communication you want to send it across to the external audience as well. So now, when you are designing it, you have to keep this basic framework in mind when we are scaling from a product to platform. One is that you have to identify the least common denominator, that what is a value that is getting generated. So in the case of Amazon, the value is that the core transaction, which enables a seller to sell the produce and a consumer or a user to buy, or a buyer to buy that produce. So that's the basic exchange, and the value is basically a successful transaction which is getting created. At Avalara, the basic exchange is basically that we allow the users to import all the transactions from various systems, and the value is that it ensures that the transactions, once they are in the system, are tax compliant and compliant as per the laws of the land. Once you have identified these core layers and you have got a solid base on that, that is when it's built, then you can create the functions, right? So Amazon, once it was able to capture the value in the exchange, now they are diversified into various elements. They are into delivery, there is an Amazon Pay. So based on these two basic layer, various variations of the product are getting developed. At Avalara, we have developed something that is called exclusive for calc. that is tax calculation. Then we are enabling the sellers to file the returns. We are also ensuring that there is a document management system in the place, which is a separate offering altogether. Now, all these the enhancements which are happening on the platform are basically happening because we have got these basic layers in place. So, whenever you design a product, and if you have got a platform vision in mind, ensure that the value and exchange are being taken care of. Now, the key drivers of the platform, basically, it has to be architected in the platform. We have talked about network effect. Behavioral design is like, how do you ensure that there is a involvement and the engagement of the users with the help of nudges and the notifications, and how you're curating with the help of smart filters, just to ensure that the right side of the suppliers are coming and goods they are offering on your platform are certified, right? So, and the two other concepts which we have not touched upon, which I would like to talk about, is you have to ensure that there's something called marginal economics. Marginal economics ensures that the cost of producing every new variant of your product on the platform reduces over a period of time. And again, going back to my previous example, where if you have identified the value that is getting created on your platform, in the exchange, these two elements, if they are sorted, then it will be easier for you to produce the enhancements and the variations of the product for the different segments of the market, and at a very lower cost. That is what marginal economics is all about. And then you have to ensure that the virality is being built in your product, right? So if you are selling a product, or if you're on Amazon, if you want to share that, you must have seen that you can easily share that, and that product which you're planning to buy, with your families or friends. And if they are not on the Amazon, the moment they click on that link, Amazon gives you an option, right, to see it without login. And if you want to buy, then you have to create a login. So that's why there is a loop which has been built in. So virality is more of a design aspect rather than a marketing aspect. So that's how it gets differentiated from word of mouth. And similarly at Avalara, we are also inching towards that direction, where we are ensuring that the virality is getting inbuilt in our platform, right? Every transaction as a seller, or as whenever you are calculating your taxes, or whenever you're filing your returns, we ensure that there is a viral element which is incorporated in the product. So that will encourage more and more users and to come on our platform. So now, product to platform, when we talk about, basically the idea of product platform is revolves around the set of the common components, modules, or parts from which a derivative product can be efficiently created and launched. What I mean by that is, so, if you have identified the core elements of your platform, like there is a common systems and interfaces that has been taken care of internally in the tech stack of your product, then there are the common elements, which can be shared across the various variations. Now, if you can see here, this is a very common example in the SaaS space, where, all these products are using basically the same subsystems and the interfaces, and on the top of it, there are the variations which are created for different segments of the market. It allows us to enable variations in the market based upon whatever the segment we are catering to. So if you are a new user, you can create a free trial account. And if you want to use additional features on the top of it, you'll be able to use individual plan. And then on the top of it, there is a professional, and then there is an enterprise. So that's how a product, something which started off as a single product, now we are inching, as a company, we are inching towards a product platform. So now, if you have to transition a product to a platform, there are a few key takeaways here, where you have to do a solid analysis, like why do you want to turn your product into a platform, and what are the benefits of doing that, right? There are risks associated when you turn your product into a platform, which means that you will have to lose on certain segments of the market because you are going broad, right? And there are risks because once you are moving towards a platform mindset, then you will have to involve partner, because you are building these ecosystems. And when the partners are coming on the platform, they will how do you ensure that your existing experience of the customers is not getting hampered? Because you have to ensure that the kind of the partners you are onboarding onto your platform, they are of a certain quality. Like, if you have to become an Amazon partner, there are stringent checks and mechanisms. If you have to launch your app in the Amazon marketplace, then you have to pass through those checks, and they do that so that the customers are the experience remains intact, because when you are becoming a platform, you're also sharing your brand with the partners, so you have to be very careful. What is the effect on the core customer exchange, right, within and outside of the product, and how the design, how the journey is going to get impacted once the various elements and various stakeholders will come in, and then what sort of a change in organization, because platform mindset, as I said, is a level above the product, where you have to align your resources more on the technology side to ensure that it's the designing of the platform is happening in an appropriate way, it's secure and scalable enough. So once you have to transition to a platform, you have to ensure that the usage of your core product is high and frequent, so that you can make that bet. And then you have to identify the gaps, right, where Amazon does calculate the taxes, but that's not the only thing they do. Their core value exchange is around powering the transactions. So they have to invite the partners, in terms of delivery, in terms of compliance, because that's what not their core job is. So if there are gaps in your existing product, like Salesforce is one of the example where they have got Apex Exchange, where Salesforce invites the partners of all sorts inwards, so that they can come and build the applications around that customer lifecycle of the CRM lifecycle. So you have to identify the gaps and give an opportunity to a partner to create a value, and then you have to ensure that you have got appropriate integration guidelines with the help of your development portal. You have to align with the development community so that they can build the applications for your platform. And of course, customer communication. So to summarize it, you have to understand, what is the core value in the exchange and functions of your product, and why, what is the benefit you will be driving if you have to, transition to a platform. And then you have to ensure that you are designing your platform strategy from a long term. You're not thinking in a short term, because in a short term, the platform is a multi-year effort, right? So it cannot be you will not get results in a quarter or in a year or so. You have to plan for at least 3 to 4 years in advance, that what are the impacts you have to absorb once you transition from product to platform. There is an important concept of design, that is composite design. So in terms of the UI and UX, you have to ensure that whenever you are producing new enhancements to your platform, that same design is getting carried forward, right? In the process, sometimes it happens that you will acquire a few other companies in a bid to become a platform, but you have to ensure that they are also following the same user guidelines, the brand guidelines of the parent product, so that the entire customer experience and remains intact, in the messaging which you are sending across to the users remains intact. Then you have to define a rollout plan. What sort of enhancements, what are the variations of your product you will identify and scale your platform to. And then again, the most important aspect is the people. You have to ensure that the teams are empowered when the transition is happening, because this transition, no matter how easy I make it sound, it is going to be very difficult. So that's how I would like to conclude my presentation on scaling the products to platform.
Excellent. Thank you, Jay. That was quite a detailed dive into the differences in products and platforms. We don't have much time for questions, but the one thing that piques my interest, you mentioned bringing virality into Avalara, which is a tax compliance platform. So I'm intrigued on how you can do virality in a product that probably privacy and security is one of the most kind of important aspects of it.
Yes, so basically, how when we talk about the virality, as I said, it's not about, say, word of mouth is different from the virality. Virality is more of a, sorry. Virality is more of a, as I said, is a design related. So, within the product, how do you ensure that with the different stakeholders, right? When I say virality for a B2B SaaS platform is slightly different from a B2C platform. So Amazon allows you to share the product which you are buying, with your friends and family members, and, you can share the feedback about it. But when you are talking about filing of the tax returns, right? So within that, virality means that virality has to ensure that more and more users, the adoption of the product is high. So how do we ensure that is like, building these key elements, allowing you to share within the team, right? Within the internal stakeholders. So within the organization, if the people are not using it, right? Because when we talk about tax compliance, it's not just about a one person's or individual's job. It involves the entire organization. And within that organization, the more and more number users, right? Be it your finance team, be it your sales team, everyone, when they are coming and onboarding and using it, so the overall usage of the platform increases, right? So like, in the case of Salesforce, say for instance, hypothetically speaking, an organization would buy 100 licenses, but effectively only 20 people are using it, but the organization is paying for the 100 of users. Now that the adoption of the product is for some reason or the other is not happening, right? So when you build a virality, you ensure that you are able to invite the internal users in the case of B2B SaaS, and you let them know that this is the platform we are using, and enable a swift onboarding of the internal users onto the platform so that it becomes viral. So virality in the case of B2B SaaS is slightly different from the B2C aspect. I hope I answered your question. You're on mute, Rory.
I really like the way you frame that, and I think Salesforce does a brilliant job of that kind of land and then just expand. And they're, from a marketplace, they're phenomenal as well. All right, Jay, thank you very much for that talk. Really appreciate it. And again, if anybody has any questions, please do share them. But I guess now what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to invite back Jay, Shreya, and Rajiv, and we're going to have a panel discussion about kind of defining the boundaries between product, UX, and design. Because what I've found very interesting, and this is my type of personality, I love trying to figure out how companies are working on the inside. I'm always keen to see what are people how are you structured and how do you approach your ways of working. So I might actually start with Rajiv, because you mentioned in your presentation that you're structured in pods. So when it comes to product UX design, could you give me an understanding of what a pod looks like? What are the roles within a pod? And then what is a pod responsible for?
Sure. So let me explain that with an example, right, of my own product vertical. So as I was mentioning in the beginning, my product vertical is called as seller growth, right? Now, when you think about seller growth, there are multiple aspects related to it. There's the acquisition of sellers. And then once the sellers are acquired or onboarded, we need to activate them. And once you do that, you need to also take care of engagement and retention aspect. And then there are operational aspects like cataloging, etc. Right? So all of these, whatever I mentioned, are individual pods or charters that we call us, right? And every pod or the charter has their own goals, which is aligned with the larger goal of the product vertical. So for example, the acquisition pod has a goal around onboarding, which aligns with the overall growth of the seller onboarding. Then the acquisition pod has similar goals around activation pod has similar goals around activation, suppliers, and engagement and retention, so on and so forth. And now once your pods are aligned to a certain goal, which in turn is aligned with the product vertical, then within the pod, it operates as its own product vertical, right? So you have all the functions. So if for example, at product vertical leadership, if you have product leaders, tech leaders, and business leaders, and the design leaders, at a pod level also, you reflect the same organization structure, right? So you will have like a product lead, you will have a tech lead, you will have a design lead, and a UX lead. And this is how it's just like a mirror image of the entire vertical itself. And they have goals, which are sub goals of the product vertical. So this is how a certain structure works.
Excellent. That's a really kind of nice. I always think of that as a network kind of cascading out instead of the hierarchy of a pyramid. It's more of a network of teams cascading out.
Exactly. And the benefit is that you create autonomous pods who are very clear about their goals, and then who have all self-contained and have all the functions which are necessary to deliver on the goals, right? And this helps us move effectively and efficiently in terms of the goals. Yeah.
Excellent. And Shreya, just from your perspective as well, I just like to, the same kind of question, which is, with those roles of product UX design and even engineering, how are you structured in terms of where are those roles sitting? Are they in pods as well, or is it more in functions?
Yeah, I mean, so there'll definitely be different charters, and every charter will have the product manager and the designer and the engineering team. But I think what is more important is how tightly coupled or loosely coupled these pods are, or these charters are. For example, let's say if you have a very high dependency on other charters, then if you want to incorporate something new, and in order to incorporate something new, you have to learn a lot from the other pod or the other charter, which makes you less flexible to incorporate something new in your charter. And I think that's a deterrent, in my opinion. While they should be tightly coupled enough, but free to make their own specific decision in terms of innovation or a new feature. Like Rajiv was talking about growth of the sellers and all of that. So if that's one, then it should also have, it should also be free to do something innovative, while it should also have cross correlation on other teams, which are also organized as product people, engineering, and design.
Sorry, so that's great. So is it a similar structure then? Is that what I'm understanding with charters, or can you explain what a charter is and how the charters are aligned in your organization?
Yeah, so I mean, aligned means aligned to each other.
Well, so in Rajiv's example, he said, okay, so there's an onboarding pod, there's an engagement pod.
Definitely. Yeah, definitely. All of these pods are the onboarding pods or the engagement pods or the growth pods, or all of them have are, in my opinion, they are operate independently as well. But they should also be free enough to have something innovative or something new on their to incorporate something new as well. So that's my opinion there.
Excellent. No, it's a great point about how kind of intertwined they are. So we'll come back to that. I just want to jump to Jay actually, and just what I'm doing is trying to get an understanding of how people are structured to give people context for the rest of the conversation. So the same question to you, Jay, on how are you structured, and particularly with those roles of kind of product, UX design, engineering, is it a similar pod structure? Is it more of a classical functional structure?
So, at an org level, yes, the structure is more or less similar as what, Rajiv and Shreya has talked about, but specifically the portfolio of product which I represent is basically, platform integration products. When we talk about platform integration products, which means that all the products within the organization, we have to collaborate with them, to ensure that there is an integration of our platform, on the sub products with the external parties, right? So we are in the sort of a messy middle, so to say, where you have to align the expectations of the the internal products, but at the same time you have to align with the platform expectations, which we are partnering with. So there is a lot of collaboration with the internal product teams. There is a lot of collaboration with the multiple engineering teams. But on the UX level, since, as I said, we are transitioning ourselves from a multi-product family to a platform, the UX strategy is very common, which cuts across the organization like integration. So there we, directly align, and the messaging which goes to the customer is the same. Is very consistent. So a UX organization cutting across the various products and the integration are in parallel with each other, whereas the various product groups are vertical. So it lays, gives you a lay of land, like, how do we interact with multiple teams?
Excellent. Okay, so my understanding, like, so you have a shared kind of services of, or a shared.
Exactly. Yeah, that's correct.
So just touching on Shreya's point there, just to dig a little bit deeper, with a platform, you almost become very kind of integrated, and what was it, tight coupling was the wording that you used. So how do you, and I'll just direct this one to Jay first, but I'll be bouncing around as well. How do you manage that coupling, in that you make sure that you're enabling the teams and not accidentally kind of restricting them from that innovative type of work that they need to do.
Yes. So what do we do is that, at an organizational level, we have, find the OKRs, right? So objectives and results are already defined. So where we as an organization are moving, in every year, like what's our theme? So on an yearly basis, on an annual basis, this exercise is done. And once the OKRs are identified, then we come on to our quarterly roadmaps, right? That, every team will be having a quarterly roadmap, and with the help of the tools, we identify what is the dependency, like on the other team. And that's how, we have got these big room planning sessions within the organization where, if the integration which I am building, for a platform, and which the product which it is touching in this quarter, their product managers and their design teams will also join. So we can, talk about that, we are shipping this and we have got a dependency on your, on the UI element of it. So we ensure that, when we are going towards a quarter, we are going as, highlighting all the dependencies which we have got on our team. It's not easy because, we're talking about here a lot of cross-functional kind of alignment. But, that's how we, do it on a quarterly basis. Every 45 days, we get together and we see that, what is the progress which we have, on the objectives which we have identified. What is our roadmap and how are we, shipping the features accordingly. So it's basically a cross-functional collaboration on a periodic basis. When I say periodic, every 6 to 8 weeks, that's we align with the various departments in the company.
Excellent. Yeah, I'd love to hear, Shreya, since you kind of raised the point about coupling, do you follow a similar approach, or how do you manage the fact that ideally teams are isolated, but in reality, there is always going to be some overlap?
Yeah, I mean, teams are isolated. You can say that it's a different charter, so it's a different set of product PMs or engineering or design is different there. But you also have goals from I'm just telling from design point of view that you'll have a shared goal, right? What you envision the product to be from the design standpoint or from the user standpoint. You would have a shared goal, which would be across all the charters. That shared goal will have a common user objective that you want to build. You want to get more. You want to make it very easy or very simple for your user. So that there'll be a common principles that your team would be aligned to. So that will, try to handle those dependency that, we are working as a team towards same goal. So even if we have a dependency on you, our shared goal should enable us to work together.
Do you ever have conflicts? So I'll just give an example where, like I worked with 2 teams and they had their OKRs, if you use that, and then one of them needed a lot more collaboration. So there had to be an agreement to focus less on what their core objective was, even though it's the organization's objective, but one team had to sacrifice their kind of focus. Do you have examples of that?
Yeah, I mean, that's when I was talking about the sweet spot that you want to attain when you're working with different teams together. That you want to, whenever you have a conflict, whenever I have a conflict, or whenever I'm trying to give my point of view, like a design point of view, while trying to understand a business point of view, I also want to achieve a sweet spot that we are going towards. And that sweet spot is kind of challenging to get at first, in the first version, maybe in V0 or something. But that sweet and they would know that how much you have compromised to get into V0. So that's it'll be easier to come to a decision later. Maybe it's difficult in the beginning, but with time, it's easier to come when you try to have the influential attitude that I was telling about. When you try to convince them that why are you trying to pitch for this particular design, what's the reason that this design will make your users adopt this feature. So if you're able to communicate that well, I think then that plays that extra role in resolving that conflict with other team.
Always back to people, relationships, and communication, which it's so true. It's what you need. Great. And Rajiv, like the example that just immediately pops to mind with that structure is if you've charged somebody with acquisition, they might get a lot of people, but they're not the right people, which then makes makes conversions job harder. So how do you kind of, with your structure that you described, how do you manage those kind of conflicts or where you need collaboration between teams?
Sure. So I think your question has two parts. One is when you're structured in a way that there is a certain handoff happening, for example, in this case, from the acquisition pod to the activation pod, how do you ensure that the at least whatever required is maintaining a certain bar or the quality, right? So in our sense, I mean, how do you manage that is when you talk about the acquisition charter, their goals will not only be around acquisition, but also the quality of the acquisition. So you get the acquisition number, but you also ensure that there is a check metric around what is the quality of the the sellers or like the users that you are onboarding, right? And only once you have met that, so your goals will be twofold. One is the acquisition metric as well as the check metric. So that's one part of it. I think your next set of question is, even when you're on pod structures, there will always be, when you're executing, there will be dependency across, like how Shreya was saying and Jay was saying, right? Dependency across multiple teams. Now, this obviously in theory, pods are supposed to be created in a messy way so that they are self-contained, etc., etc. But you know, like you and I know that it doesn't happen always like that, right? So I have personally seen three types of dependencies, right? It could be more, but broadly you can categorize into three. One is when the dependency is very, very, it's not very high, like the effort is not very high. And in that point of time, it's like relationships works the best, right? As you were saying, like you have like probably a week's worth of effort. Hey, you know what, you help me out this time, next time around, I will ensure that you have something, I will help you out, right? So it's the effort, like if the dependency is of a smaller magnitude, I think relationships works out in terms of how the pods collaborate. Then the second type is wherein the dependency on the other pod is considerable enough so that if they were to help you, they will have to deprioritize something from their end, right? But it is important for you. It is not important from their scheme of things. Now this becomes tricky, right? Now, how do you solve this? Is like we have tried various ways. One is via like processes, wherein, as Jay was saying, at the beginning of the planning cycle, you kind of have a view that there will be this dependency, and you earmark a certain capacity, saying that I will have the dependency 1 month down the line. I need help from you, and you kind of do that handshake at the beginning of the planning cycle. So they have accounted for it, right? Obviously, when you get into it, things can change, etc. But this handshake helps in expectation setting at a later point in time. So that's another way of doing it. The third way of which happens is the like strategic projects at a company level, which has like a leadership buy-in. And in that case, things are slightly much more easier, wherein the leadership has said that, hey, you know what, this is a project and you have to execute it no matter what, because it's a strategic priority. And in that case, you have like in our case, you have sometimes our lead product manager and supporting PMs of each of the pods. And it is a given that in a planning cycle, this has been a strategic project, and every pod needs to kind of participate in taking that through. So these are the three ways and three different ways I have seen happening. Another way, which I have personally tried to do with decent amount of success, is what I term it as like an open source model, right? Wherein if you look at it, if your code base is healthy enough, if you have good unit test cases, if you have really good guardrails, someone from other pod can also contribute towards your code base, right? So if you have dependency, you can actually contribute towards other pods code base, go through like a PR, CR review, and then ensure that that code base gets into that, right? And you need to ensure that the teams are enabled to make that happen. So you need to ensure that there is proper documentation, there's a processor, or etc. there. But this is another way that I have tried to manage the dependencies and has worked in a lot of cases.
Excellent. Yeah, I like that approach. It's kind of, I've heard a lot of people doing inner sourcing, where everything gets published to their internal kind of things, and anybody, like when they're pulling their system, it's pulling hundreds of packages together that anybody can contribute to. So that's a great approach. I want to touch on, because I think everybody's talked about it now. So back to, I guess, the roles. one of the key things, if you were looking at Marty Kagan or kind of one of those thought leaders in product management, they say the product manager is responsible for the vision of the product. They're responsible for the kind of the strategy and the roadmap. I'd love to get a sense in your organizations, if you have this kind of split up of different pods, who is responsible? Is it more of a senior management or setting that through? I guess I might start with you, Jay, because you mentioned your OKR process and where those OKRs are being set quarterly and then kind of cascading down. So is there, how much autonomy do the teams have for setting their own kind of vision of the product and the strategy, and how much is it coming from more senior management?
So there's no clear answer to it, to be honest, Rory, because as Rajiv already highlighted, if it's a strategic product, right? If it's a strategic delivery, then all hands on the deck, right? Then priorities, and it does not happen very often, but when it happens, then priorities will take a backseat. But in a normal circumstances, a product manager is indeed responsible for everything that is related to product, right? So basically we own the entire ship, right? Everything that relates to a product which is involving, even though we can have dependencies, we can cite dependencies, but we have to ensure that other teams are also getting involved. And the idea is that these are our objectives, this is our roadmap, and these roadmaps should be met. And you go ahead and give your best shot, right? And then you use all sort of tools, which are available at your disposal, by meaning that you use your PR, you use your relationship with developers, to ensure that the product is getting shipped on the time, and there's a resource mobilization, right? In terms of like can you actually get help from someone else if your code is standard enough, right? So it works at a multiple level, but at the end of the day, as a product manager, it becomes our responsibility to ensure that all dependencies are sorted and the product is getting shipped on time. I won't say a CEO of the product, but yes, definitely an owner, and the responsibility lies on our shoulders.
Yeah, it's the accountability without authority or something.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, in the real sense.
Yeah, Shreya, I'd love to hear. So you're slightly different, I guess, with your charters. So how does the kind of the core prioritization happen in your organization?
So I think I'll just also talk in terms of design. Like I understand that the responsibility is on the PM, but I wouldn't like, when I'm working with a PM, I wouldn't completely like you give me an entire PRD document, a long document, you tell me what all are supposed to go into it and what features are you going to put into it. I generally want to work with them while crafting the PRD, or I want to sit with them. I want to understand what they think, what their thought process is like, put my also thought process, also align with what research says, and then go ahead and build that. I will not say roadmap, but what would go in this feature, what all would go in the feature, and just not let the product take the entire ownership there in terms of what is right, what all supposed to be go. Maybe what they think is supposed to be go is a hypothesis which we need to validate from users. Again, design sprint would come here to it's a 1 week time, then you can use design sprint to prototype and test something within 5 days and take it out to your users and see. A product team thinks that this is what their users want, but does it actually what their users want? Maybe you want to test it. So I would like to highlight that point, that designers should play a part here. They should step up, conduct a design sprint, work with their PMs, see if this feature or this whatever they're thinking for the product is actually what their people want or not.
Yeah, it's so many, the hippo problem of somebody thinking that they know what they need, but you always need to validate. And I'm as guilty of that. I always think I have these great ideas, and no, definitely need to validate them.
And if we take the a very long time, then maybe not, because everyone would not be open to the idea that, you find it out. You may not have the time or resources to do that. That is it what your users actually want. So that's why I said maybe a short day or a 5-day process or a design sprint would help here. If you don't have a very long time, but you still want to test it out if this is something which your users are looking for.
Yeah, no, even very small pieces of information can be hugely valuable when you don't know much at the start.
Yeah.
And Rajiv, so with your kind of independent pods, do you have an OKR process? Do you have what's your kind of strategy, or do the pods kind of try to agree on their own strategies?
Yeah. So again, our process have also evolved, and I've seen multiple processes of it. I can share the current process, which is what we follow. So we take yearly targets in terms of our goals, right? And then we have something called as a vision to strategy exercise. So you say that if these are your goals, then what is your strategy over a yearly kind of long period to achieve towards that goal, right? And this is when you look at your TAM, and then you say that, okay, what are the opportunity areas? Then you size your opportunities, and then you say that these are the 10x opportunities, and then you say that this is where I will deep dive, and these kind of things, right? So vision to strategy is mostly around identifying opportunity areas and then aligning that these are the pods which are responsible for each of these opportunity areas, right? And once you do that, then you go through a certain set of processes wherein every pod then gets to a level wherein they know that in alignment with the overall verticals vision and strategy, where do my pod kind of fit in, right? And they carve out their own strategy based on that, and then they run an exercise saying that this is how we are going to, given my goals that I have, this is how my strategy on the pod side would be. And this is run by so the vision to strategy exercise is done by business and product leaders, entire team together. Obviously there's a single threaded leader responsible for it, but everyone from the vertical, all the leaders from the vertical, and also the one-ons are involved in that actually. And then when it's done at a pod level, the same thing, like the business leads and the product leads, etc., do it at a pod level also. Now, once you do that, then the output of that is clear set of OKRs, which says that, okay, with owners saying that if this is my strategy, this is what I need to do. There's a clear set of OKRs that I need to achieve with owners, either from a business side or a design side or a product side, to achieve that. And once you have that, then you have a list of things that you need to do to achieve a strategy. You have the owners, and then you're free to execute on that front. So typically, this is the framework that we try to use.
Excellent. It's great. Just I love hearing the different approaches that different kind of teams are using, and they're all kind of similar in ways, but slightly different. So that's great. The one thing that I want to touch on, and back to the concept of product UX design, when in setting the strategy, and kind of to Shreya's point of, you need to validate that what you're doing is the right thing to do. I saw a survey where it said they asked product managers, UX and designers, who is responsible for user research or interviewing users, and everybody said it was them primarily. So product managers said they were responsible for talking to the users to understand their needs. Researchers said, well, no, it's clearly us. And designers said, well, we have to understand the needs to design the solution. So is there any kind of overlap between the roles, or do you have very clear kind of, okay, product managers look after this, researchers look after this, designers look after this? I might start with you, Shreya, given that you talked quite a bit about the design kind of sprint process.
Yeah, so I would say that there's obviously, you can't say that one person is 100% responsible, because everyone's perspective is also needed to find out that information from the user. Maybe a PM can share their ideas that, can you see if this is possibly that they're looking for? Maybe a question help in finding out what the users want. They can aid it, or maybe they can attend some interviews with the users as well. So that would work. I wouldn't say like one person does a job and then delegates it to the other person to conduct the interviews. That approach might not work at all the places, but I would say that all of them have to collectively play a part because they're working towards same goal. Maybe a researcher is a pro at conducting proper researches and all of that, but what was the objective behind all of that? That has to also come from product and design.
Okay, so in your kind of, if I were to summarize, the objective and the goals come from product, but the designer is the person going out there.
Definitely, yeah, should be.
Okay, we might have some dissenting views. We'll see what happens as we go through. Jay, I'd love to hear from your perspective, because often I've talked to a lot of platform teams and they actually don't have research or designers because they're kind of saying, look, we're building for developers, so it's just an API or something like that. So do you have researchers and designers in your team looking after your platform? And then who is responsible for kind of doing the end research with the customers to figure out what they need?
Yeah, I mean, like, as developers are also users, right? So we are building a developer community, we are building our APIs, and what are the use cases it is going to cater to, right? So it's very important for to understand the users, right? Because at the end of the day, developers are basically going to be the ambassadors of your APIs, and they will build products on the top of your platform. So even though the persona of the user is quite defined, but still you have to work with the developers, right? So when we go to the developers, our approach is basically being a tag team. We always partner with our user research teams, to get their views, because basically the idea is to work as a team, right? As Shreya has rightly pointed out, they are very good at their job. They execute user interviews and they use all the techniques at their disposal to ensure that we are getting the right answers. But why has to come from product management, and that's how that why and how gets together, and the execution happens. So it's more of a tag team, in our case, where we go together and interview the users, and the responsibility lies on both the teams.
So quite a similar approach there then. Rajiv,
Yes,
are you going to make it all consistent, or do you have a dissenting view?
No, I think mostly similar. Just a few points I would like to add is there are some of the commonalities or common things that each of them do, right? For example, if you product managers or designers or UX researchers, anyone will like take up a phone and call up a user and talk about certain aspects, right? That anyone will do. I think that happens. But where we try to how the team tries to help each other is like look at each other's expertise and then help out the other side on that aspects, right? So for example, when it comes to survey design or like talking to users about something, user research team, like a lot of times have the view around what is the right way to do it, right? At that point in time, they will be able to help out the product team and the design team to do it the right way. Once you do that, then you can actually take it forward, right? In a more decentralized way. Whereas now the user research team can do other things like doing more foundational research or doing other things which are more long-term, long horizon sort of things, right? Which maybe the product team and the designers team might not be able to do in that sense. So there is obviously like there are intersections, and then there were like specialities which each of them are responsible for. So this is the mode I've seen it working and working effectively.
Yeah, no, it's great. And that's, I guess, the point of a cross-functional team is that you have those people who can work very closely and complement each other. But on that point, conflict. So there's an example of the whole kind of, so the product manager might have an idea, but the designer has done some, or the researcher's done some research and they have an idea, and the designer is prototypes and they have a different idea, and the developers are saying, no, we can't do that, we should do something else. So when you have that kind of, every person has their core area of speciality, but they're also contributing, how do you deal with conflict? I might start with Jay this time.
So, conflict is inevitable, right? Because yeah, as a human, there is always going to be a conflict, right? In terms of, goals and objectives. It's all about, agreeing to a disagreement, right? And I might sound a bit meta here, but whenever this happens, at the end of the day, product is getting built for an end user, right? Who is going to use it, right? As long as we have got that persona in mind and what is best for the user, all right, who is going to use the product and what is best for them, that is paramount to anything. Then, every ego vanishes, because if I am building something which is non-usable, then what's the point, right? That's the worst thing that can happen to a product. And I go by that thesis that whatever is best for the product and what is the best for the users, will take that. So that's how, we resolve the conflict in terms of, whose idea is the best, right? The second one, in terms of, deadlines, or, whose prioritization will take, one or the other, or, what are the engineering team's priorities. These are something, we take a conscious call. Like, if we do this, then what will happen? And what is the impact analysis of taking one over the other? So then there we become, a more scientific approach as to, what is the impact? If I go with the option A, what will be the outcome? And if I go with the option B, what will be the outcome? And we lay down the guardrails of, market will be addressing to what is the dollar value which is tagged to a particular feature, what is the resource that is required to pull that off. All these calculations gets into picture. So for prioritization, it's more scientific, but the uber goal is to ensure that customer is taken care of. So it's more of a rallying cry, so to say, and everything for the customer.
Does anybody have, I'll leave it open to Shri or Rajiv, do you have an example where even though it's kind of the customer, like I've been in a situation where people are saying, no, this is right for the customer, no, this is right for the customer. So there has been that conflict. Do either of you have an example?
So I would say that, see, whenever a person is having a conflict, for example, I'm having a conflict as a designer, it is based on something. It's based on my experience. It's based on what I have seen for the users, or it's what it's based on a proof. And Jay was also saying that what numbers are associated. If I have that concrete evidence attached to it, that is my influence to resolve the conflict with other team as a designer. I can talk more from the design point of view, right? That I would resolve a conflict only on the basis of the evidences that I have as a designer. Only then I can put my point ahead. And it's not us versus them. Obviously, it's not us versus them. It's the shared understanding that you want to build for the product. So, yeah.
Yeah. And I think going back to what Jay was also mentioning, right? I think there needs to be a certain level of maturity to deal with these conflicts, right? Obviously, we are like working in a creative space, and there will be opinions, and there will be strongly held opinions, weakly held opinions, etc. But then, how do we deal with this is very important, and that's where I feel that mature teams understand the boundaries, right? They know that which of the decisions I'm accountable for, and I need to live with it, and which of the decisions are some things which I'm trying to influence, right? So for example, I can have, as a product manager, I probably have a opinion or like a suggestion about a design interaction, but at the end of the day, I have to understand that is the designer's call, right? Like they'll probably, in that case, they will take the decision. Similarly, I might have an opinion about implementation decision. At the end of the day, I know that my engineering team is responsible for taking that decision, right? So knowing where to draw the line between actually suggesting or recommending or influencing and taking a step back when that happens, when there is a counter, and understanding when to agree to disagree, as Jay was saying. I think that's more of an art than a science, but that's how healthy teams operate, I guess.
No, this has been a fantastic conversation. I've really enjoyed it. I could keep going for ages, but unfortunately we are out of time. But I hope everybody has enjoyed listening to it. I've really enjoyed having the conversation. So thank you, Rajiv, Shreya, and Jay, and thank you for all your contribution.
Thank you, Roy. Thank you, everyone. Bye.
So that brings us to the end. So we'll just say, after saying thank you again to all of the speakers, and thank you for tuning in and watching, I'll just leave you with a special promotion. We're running our UXDX APAC event in June. It is going to be online because we were looking at Singapore, but they're quite strict on their COVID lockdown still. So unfortunately, we can't do a physical event this year, but we will be coming online this year and in person next year. Early bird tickets are on sale now if you would like to take advantage of those. And yep, hopefully we can see you there. There's a community discount code of 10% to get even cheaper prices as well. So thank you very much for attending, and I hope to see you soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.